Nebraska, they got under Penn State's skin a bit in the Bryce Jordan Center. And honestly, that's not a bad thing.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State Wrestling and Penn State Football. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. Leave a like on the show as well. It certainly helps me out here. We're going to talk about the Cael Tax. The Cael Tax. We'll explain that later in segment 3. I want to give some other overall takeaways because I'm going to pick back up with the overarching themes of this dual meet. But Marcus Blaze continues to impress and gets another ranked win. He just continues to rattle off ranked wins. And we'll work our way up to Cole Mirasola and how he's right there in the mix with some of these elite heavyweight wrestlers. But there is hidden value from this Nebraska dual meet. And it's the fact that Nebraska got under Penn State's skin. Now, not the entire dual meet, of course, right? We know the select instances. Okay, Braeden Davis, Levi Haines, right? That is extremely uncharacteristic of Levi Haines. And if you watch the replay of it, it doesn't exactly keep Chris Minto from falling off of the mat and into the table on the side. So, and again, Antrell Taylor, I add that bout into this equation as well, because it forced Penn State to have somewhat of a reality check that not every match is going to be perfect. And they operate that way, right? Cael Sanderson says that, but to actually go through it and to see it, and I think that's good for the fans as well. When I watched that match, hey, this isn't a typical Penn State wrestling match. Again, Braeden Davis post-match, and I know that, right, I understand the response. You still can't do it. You got to find a way to have some self-control. Brock Hardy basically saying, hey, good job, champ. Nice try. Nice try. Better luck next time. It's a little disrespectful, I must say. But you have to find the way to... I'm glad they had these kind of learning moments in the middle of the season and not going into the Big Ten tournament. And more importantly, NCAAs. So Braeden got to find a way to contain that emotion. And I'm sure Cael Sanderson had a conversation and everything was hashed out at practice. I also want to point out Levi Haines. Again, tensions were boiling over through most of the match. It's not like this was just an isolated event. It's just, hey, oh, you're just lingering on the Braeden Davis situation. No, not at all. Because even though nothing transpired into it, I think about how Mitchell Mesenbrink was somewhat... He clapped in the middle of the match at LJ Arujo. Is that to get him to wrestle more? Right there was some emotional charge there, more than just Braeden Davis's incident with Brock Hardy. Again, Levi Haines and Chris Minto. Penn State getting docked the team point because of Davis, but you're kind of lucky that there was no disqualification for Levi Haines. And it's just, it just kind of points out, hey, you got to be sharp. You can't let your emotions get the best of you there. And I add the Antrell Taylor PJ Duke match to it as well. Not because PJ Duke lost his mind or was out of control or anything like that, but it seemed like Nebraska's intentions, for the most part, they weren't necessarily there trying to win. Okay, yes, I know, but stay with me here. Yes, they came in to compete. They came into, of course, they would want to win, but they know what the stakes are. This is the #1 Penn State team. You are massively discredited going into this matchup. You know your chances are slim to win this one. So what can you do? You can get on Penn State's nerves. You can try to find every little individual advantage to get something against Penn State. So be a headache, be an issue, be a bull in the china shop. And that's how I tried to frame it. I think some people, there were certainly vocal people in the comments section when I talked about this in my preview shows, that Penn State was going to be tested by Nebraska. Well, I feel somewhat vindicated. Hey, Penn State still won by a solid margin. That's a number 5 team in the country, and they won 26-12. They took 7 out of 10 bouts. And the ones that they did lose were close. Braeden Davis gave Brock Hardy a fight, granted for 2 periods, but that's honestly the most aggressive and some of the better wrestling that I've seen from Braeden Davis. PJ Duke lost a tiebreaker to Antrell Taylor, who's the defending NCAA champ. I have all the confidence in the world that PJ Duke is just taking that one, putting it in his pocket and going, and he will win that rematch. Cael even brought it up, or he answered it. He didn't bring it up, but when it was brought up, said, hey, teams are going to wrestle us that way, where they're going to back up and they're going to wrestle a little more passively there because that's how they wrestle us. So even though Nebraska is a strong team, they are going to have some contenders when March rolls around. But even still, Penn State is still going to be treated as Penn State. And the crowd's emotionally charged, right? Because you see it. We all saw it. Antrell Taylor not being the most active in that match against PJ Duke. Okay. AJ Ferrari at the end. There were other storylines more than just 2 teams going to wrestle. And Nebraska, from what I saw, came in with the mentality, we're just going to try to ruin Penn State's night any way that we can. We might not win this dual meet, but anything we can do just to annoy them. And it worked. And it's not a bad thing because it is a good friendly reminder. It is an appropriate test because Ohio State is on the horizon. I'm not trying to imply that Penn State's going to be on upset watch against Ohio State. I think Penn State's still going to have, they're not going to have, let's just say this, there are going to be issues in that duel. That is going to be a scrappy duel. And Iowa didn't do this. And we called that. We said that Iowa wasn't going to be that much of a threat. But Nebraska, in other ways, gave everything Penn State that they could handle, and they still came out on top decisively. But they hit a few speed bumps along the way. And that's the hidden value of this Nebraska dual meet. But let's talk about some of the other matchups here, because Penn State still did win fairly decisively. Top 10 wins, decisive top 10 wins at other weight classes. Marcus Blaze, Rocco Welsh, proving that he is definitively the number 1 guy at 184. We got more matchups to break down coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you have not already, go check out the all-new Everydayer Club. You will get more access to this show, access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Nittany Lions, compatible with Apple, Spotify, and every other major podcasting app as a member of the Everydayer Club. You will also get an invitation to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You can go to lockedonnittanylions.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more about the all-new Everydayer Club. Okay, so let's get into some of these other matchups and takeaways from this dual meet, because Marcus Blaze beat a top 10 opponent. And Cole Mirasola, close one with AJ Ferrari, right? And I think that, Mirasola is right there in the mix at heavyweight to be an All-American, to end up on the podium, but he's not far away from some of the best wrestlers in that weight class. So this duel was more than just PJ Duke and Antrell Taylor, the bad antics from Braeden Davis and Levi Haines, right? Let's talk about Marcus Blaze, because it's not that he hasn't been respected to this point. Okay, I want to preface that and make that very clear. I'm not trying to start an underdog narrative for Marcus Blaze. This is a very crowded 133-pound weight class, but if you haven't paid close attention, let's look now at some of the wrestlers that he's picked up ranked wins against. The resume is quite impressive. Okay, Tyler Knox of Stanford, top 10. Drake Ayala of Iowa, top 10. Jacob Van D of Nebraska, top 10. Ethan Bergink, top 15. Braxton Brown, top 20. Sean Speidel, top 25. Dylan Shaver, ranked, not to the extent that maybe he would, better wrestling. He's been a better wrestler at times at Rutgers. And then another ranked wrestler in Luke Willichel. That's a pretty solid resume for the true freshman. And it's catching on, because he was ranked outside of the top 5 for a portion of time, but now he's 16-0, and he just continues to pick up ranked win after ranked win after ranked win. I would argue that, so at Intermat, again, maybe I'm splitting hairs here, Lucas Bird should be number 1 overall. Ben Davino has the case to be number 2. Marcus Blaze should be number 3. Evan Frost has the one loss. So I would put Marcus Blaze at number 3 to this point, especially since he has been defeating other quality wrestlers. This isn't just him being undefeated casually. No, the resume speaks for itself. But can we really complain about top 4 there, right? So business as usual for Shane Van Ness. Not a major decision or a tech fall, but hey, Chance Lamer is ranked. Again, another one of those Nebraska wrestlers that is up and coming. Better wrestling is down the road for Lamer. Mitchell Mesenbrink, that's a top 10 wrestler in Arujo. And again, one of those future faces in the Nebraska lineup. And it's a 20-5 tech fall. Mesenbrink continues to show that he should be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, for the Hodge Trophy. And I know the difference is going to be pins. Well, we've seen Mesenbrink do more than just tech fall his opponent. He's been more conscious of, how am I going to get the fall? How am I going to get the pin? That's going to be the differentiator here. Mesenbrink across the board, it was a favorite going in, right? I know this, but now just continues to add to that. And he's wrestling, right? He's trying to be different when it comes to how he is approaching the Hodge Trophy. I know that's not his mindset, but you can see it, right? He's not just going after tech falls. He's not just trying to put up a bunch of points. He is trying to go for the fall itself. Rocco Welsh. Now, I wasn't necessarily skeptical of Rocco Welsh, but hey, Silas Allred comes in just from the sports psych angle of it. You defeat Angelo Ferrari. How are you going to back that up, right? That's easier said than done. When you reach the peak in sports, there's usually a reality check. Usually. But Rocco Welsh, that's the point I'm trying to make here. Rocco Welsh has a major decision against a top 10 opponent in Silas Allred. 14-5. Welsh continues to prove that he is the number 1 guy at 184. This is a very top-heavy 184 class. We know Angelo Ferrari and Rocco Welsh are going to meet again at some point. Maybe, right? Because that 1 seed is going to be very important at Big Tens and NCAAs, who you're going to get matched up with. Are you facing Max McAnally or Angelo Ferrari in the semifinal, or are you going to meet one of them in the championship? So the 1 seed across the board at 184 is going to be extremely important. It's extreme. I would say probably, arguably, one of the most important number 1 seeds because of how top heavy 184 is. So Welsh needs to maintain that. How you do that? Just keep winning. Just keep winning. Okay. So you defeated at some point, you are going to have to, again, go up against one of these wrestlers. Rocco Welsh is guaranteed at Big Tens to wrestle either Angelo Ferrari again, maybe both. Who knows at the end of the day, right? You could wrestle one, if not potentially both. I know there would be a lot of radical seeding there with that one, and it implies maybe, hey, Welsh stumbles along the way. I'm just saying it's a possibility because anything can happen. But if Welsh continues to win out, he's the 1 seed. Ferrari and McAnally are going to have to go through one another. But then also at NCAAs, again, who do you want to wrestle in that potential semifinals matchup? And of course, don't forget about Aiden Sinclair. And I hope nobody did. I hope nobody forgot about Sinclair, because I said most of this conversation was around Zach Ryder and Angelo Ferrari, and Max McAnally runs the 184-pound weight class, or at least he's the favorite. We can settle on him being the favorite. I didn't see it that way. And Angelo Ferrari, he's absolutely in the mix. But to say the original first 4 was, it seemed to be the consensus was McAnally, Ferrari, Welsh, and then Ryder. And I said, hey, don't forget about Aiden Sinclair. It's Sinclair here. And look at that. We've now shuffled the deck. Rocco Welsh is on top currently. Ferrari, Sinclair, McAnally. So all Welsh has to do is win out to this point in time. And then Cole Mirasola. Cole, just a simple, I also don't want to skip over Josh Barr, right? Josh, it's his weight class. 197 is his weight class, similar to Mitchell Mesenbrink. He's alone at the top. Good luck to any challengers, right? And again, I know anything can happen, but Barr just continues to dominate. That's a top 10 ranked wrestler. Another young and up-and-coming wrestler for Nebraska. Makes it look a little too easy. 21-9 over Camden McDaniel. And then you get to AJ Ferrari and Cole Mirasola. 2-1. Mirasola, I thought could have had the takedown. This was the difference of a riding time point. These two aren't far apart. Everybody knows this. And I thought Mirasola looked like he had more in the tank. And that very well should be the case. Which is interesting, though, because AJ Ferrari used to be dubbed Mr. Fast Twitch. Mirasola, I know he's lighter, but that was Ferrari's shtick, right? It's how quick he is, how fast he is. That's supposed to translate to the heavyweight, or at least you're supposed to be the fastest there. I would argue that Mirasola, where Ferrari, though, is overcompensating is strength. And that's usually going to pay dividends, right? You win by a riding time point. So Mirasola, he was close on a couple of shots there. I think if they wrestle this one again, I don't know that it goes in Ferrari's favor. I don't know that he can, and especially when this is going to be the game plan. You know that Ferrari is going to do the same, try to execute the same kind of game plan against Mirasola if and when they have a rematch, which I'm anticipating here, whether that's at Big Tens or NCAAs. I think we'll see Ferrari and Mirasola again. And I know it's a 2-1 score. That one, maybe it's the Ferrari effect. And because the crowd was into it, giving him all the ovations, right? All the boos. Mirasola, that match was entertaining. So from my point of view, it was. And Big Tens at State College again. Okay. Now let's talk about something that circulates on social media. The Cael Tax. Is this by design? What is the Cael Tax? The metaphorical payment that if you come to Penn State, you have to lose a match that you're not supposed to. Is it real? Is it a myth? What is the Cael Tax? That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the guesswork or the stress. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect with them online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling all of it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. That's right, $150 all in if a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book an appointment today. That is turbotax.com/local. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you are backing the favorite, you're going with the underdog, or you're building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone has been waiting for. This is where predictions will turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, all you got to do is bet just $5 and you will get $200 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, $200 in bonus bets. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. It's the last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Cael Tax. Is it an internet joke? Is it a myth? Is it a curse? Coaching genius? What is the Cael Tax? So this is a bit of a running joke online, on social media, about how every elite wrestler that joins Penn State, if they want to achieve their goals, the price that they have to pay is eventually losing a match or a couple of matches that they're really not supposed to, that you wouldn't expect them to, as a way to say thank you to Cael Sanderson for working with you, for being your coach. Again, this is the idea of the joke, and this isn't mine, but I'm very intrigued by it. You will eventually lose a match and not go undefeated to pay respect to the one person who did in NCAA wrestling history, Cael Sanderson. So this is the Cael Tax. It is in a way legit. It's a joke, but in a way it's legit, because if you actually analyze the way that Penn State wrestling operates, it's dubbed the Cael Tax, but really what it is a success tax. So this isn't something that Cael Sanderson intentionally does, that he requires every single elite wrestler to lose a match. And that, I mean, come on, it's very difficult to do as it is. So is there a David Taylor tax? Is there, right? There's not this payment system that is intentionally set up, but by proxy, the Cael Tax does exist for Penn State, because Cael Sanderson knows the formula of how to achieve all of your goals, all of your wrestling dreams, if you want to be the top wrestler. That is who you want to work with. So by proxy, it is real, even though it is unintentional. And again, I also want to add that it is already extremely difficult to go undefeated as it is. You don't need a Cael Tax to intentionally sabotage anyone, because it is extremely difficult to go undefeated over the course of 4 seasons of wrestling. So, and this, of course, is in direct relation to PJ Duke. You know, PJ Duke is one of the very few prospects that you could sit back and say, hey, this guy has a chance to possibly do the unthinkable. Well, that's put to rest because he paid the Cael Tax against Antrell Taylor, right? So what it is in reality, it's a joke online. It's a running joke in wrestling circles, but I believe it is actually a real phenomenon, because The way that Penn State wrestlers train, the way that they go about their practices, it is all for the buildup of the postseason. The dual meets are inconsequential to Penn State. They don't matter. They don't. When you actually break it down into a yes or no dichotomy, they do not matter in the scheme of things. Cael has made this very clear. It is all about what you do at Big Tens, and that's not to say they're unimportant, but the training, the process, it is how you perform through the tournaments. The dual meets are extra practices. So what does Penn State and Cael Sanderson do? They push the wrestlers. They push the wrestlers and use these dual meets as an added practice. How do you wrestle against elite competition when there's not as many consequences? Because if you lose in the Big Ten tournament, you're done. You lose in the NCAA tournament, you're done. You don't get a do-over. Sure, there's wrestlebacks and everything else, but when we're talking about gold, when we're talking about an NCAA title, you make a mistake and lose a dual meet. Sure, you can wrestle back, and there is pride and there's a sense of accomplishment in that. I'm never going to disregard somebody. Let's take Tyler Kasak, for example, who lost early in his one NCAA tournament, wrestled all the way back and finished in third place. But he didn't have a chance at a finals appearance. He didn't have a chance at first place. How do you wrestle against elite competition throughout the season when you are tired, when you are fatigued, when you are mentally worn down through practices? How do you wrestle when you're at 50% and your opponent's probably a lot closer to 100%? That's not a guarantee every time. That's not what it's always going to be every single matchup. But how do you wrestle when you're at a disadvantage? And that's the idea, is that you are going to train, you're going to train as hard as possible and be put into situations that are only going to make you better. It's the adversity of it. It's the difficulty of it. So when you do it throughout the regular season, so when you wrestle, if you're PJ Duke and you're wrestling Antrell Taylor, this is an example because we saw it. We have something that we can actually compare it to. PJ Duke goes into that dual meet probably not with a full amount of energy, but he learned a lot. He learned more about himself in a situation where, okay, if I wrestle like this when I'm not as fresh, I'm not as close to 100% as I would like to be, so that when you get to Big Tens, when you get to the NCAA tournament, now Antrell Taylor is not as difficult like he was in midseason. Now these other matchups don't seem as daunting. And I know for PJ Duke, not a lot of matchups are going to be daunting. Not a lot of matchups are going to be difficult. But I hope I'm conveying my point accurately to say that the Cael Tax, while it isn't defined, it's not an actual thing that Cael and the coaching staff had set up. But it's going to exist because Penn State, the way that they train, the way that they practice, at some point you're going to lose a match that you're not supposed to, or a close match that didn't go your way, because it's designed to be that way to get you peaking for the postseason so that you are at your best for Big Tens for the NCAA tournament. Because if you lose a dual meet matchup against Nebraska, it doesn't cost you in the end. You lose against Iowa, anybody, pick a matchup. It's all about in preparation for the postseason, for Big Tens, for NCAAs primarily, right? And Cael has said that dozens of times. Nobody remembers how you did in a dual meet on a Friday night. It's not to say they're unimportant, but everybody talks about, and even Big Tens. Nobody's having conversations. Man, do you remember that time? No. It's, did you win gold? The champions are remembered. How many of you can name, I'm sure wrestling gurus, the wrestling experts, the biggest fans out there can probably name a lot of finals matchups. You are not thinking though, oh, that guy, he won silver. That guy, he took home second place. You're talking about the winner. You're talking about the people that brought home titles and championships year in and year out. Cael Sanderson understands this both on the the domestic stage in the United States at the NCAA level, and then all the way when it comes to the World Championships. So this is a necessary cost to pay if you want to achieve those goals. That is where we're going to wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out this show. Like the episode, it helps a ton. Comment, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Be a part of the conversation. And subscribe if you are new to the channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate the support as always. For more conversations around Penn State wrestling, Penn State football, all your favorite Penn State sports teams, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.